Hello, and welcome to the Art Ambassador Radio Show. I'm your host, Gwenda Joyce, and we're live on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. Thanks for joining us today. It's great to have you here on the Art Ambassador Radio Show. This is where we bring art into the conversation. We talk about art, artists, and the world of art in all its various forms. Whether you're an artist, art lover, collector, or art world professional, we love to have you here. The art world is broad, and it's gotten so much bigger in the last 25 years, which is when I met my guest, who's going to be on the show today, Michael Lyons-Wier of Lyons-Wier Gallery in New York. 25 years. It's a long time. One thing we used to say when I first started in the art world was that it's amazing how small this world is. You tended to meet the same people over and over again in different places. You felt like you knew everybody. Over the 25 years since Michael Lyons-Wier and I first knew each other, the art world has expanded and grown like crazy. When I was growing up, it was rare for people to go to galleries and museums to look at art. None of my friends did, and I just went occasionally when my mother insisted. It was a mysterious world, and you never felt like you understood it unless you were part of the in-group. Only names like Picasso and Van Gogh were people who were the names that people understood, and that was because they were sort of unapproachable or tragic figures. But now there's a museum or art center in every city, and the buildings themselves are architectural monuments that people throng to. They go to see shows, and huge crowds of people go to see the shows in the museums. Not only are the artists stars of today, but curators and gallery directors are too. And galleries are known as places to go and see the most exciting art being made today. Social media has contributed to that because it's filled with information on shows to see, and including pop-up shows that you've heard about and you don't want to miss. As with everything else, the internet and social media have changed the way art is seen and who gets attention for their art. It's caused a lot of change in that the audience for art is much bigger and it's much more accessible. You don't have to be someone with an art history degree to understand it. Everyone can enjoy it. It's also caused a lot of change in how institutions and galleries do business. Everyone is being forced to adapt to the changes, or if they don't get it, they withdraw. Nowhere is this more evident than in the heart of the art world, New York City, where there are hundreds, even thousands of galleries. Historically, everyone flocked to New York to see what was the latest and the best in the world of art. It's still true. It's a place to check in with every so often for me, for sure. Chelsea is the neighborhood that's the undisputed center for galleries, but there are smaller satellite areas in different parts of New York City, such as Brooklyn or the Lower East Side, which is in the vicinity of the new museum. New York City has been the center of the art world ever since it took the limelight away from Europe in World War II. It's still the hub. It's still the top pinnacle of what artists want to reach, and collectors too. For artists, New York has always been a big nut to crack. You wanted to show there because it meant you had made it. It used to be that you weren't considered a serious artist or an artist of note unless you were showing as part of the New York art scene. The museums there are the best in the world, and there are hundreds of businesses that collect art and lots of arts institutions that are part of the art world, making up a very complex network of activity that supports contemporary art, fine art, and achieving that high level. So much activity has been centered there in New York that it used to be that people didn't acknowledge that much went on when you left New York and crossed the Hudson River. You know that attitude. One colleague of mine literally obsessed over whether or not she should take a curatorial position in another city that was offered to her outside of New York. I mean, the position was a really great one. It was at the High Museum in Atlanta. But even though it was very desirable to her, she worried about what it would mean for her as a career move if she left New York, and whether she could ever come back. These days, that kind of movement in the art world isn't so much of a problem. The entire world of art has opened up now. Over the years, the different regions of the country have developed strong identities as art centers, and arts institutions and collections exist in every major city across the country, often based around artists in that region, so that there's an identification with those living and working there and those relating to what it means to live and work there. Los Angeles has grown so much in the last 5 years with its emphasis on showing artists that are part of the Pacific Standard Time with funding from the Getty that it's considered a major rival to New York. And it has a really dynamic art scene. If you don't know it, I encourage you to take a look at it. People now crisscross the country all the time to take advantage of the best job offer. And they're going to cities and communities that they didn't know much about before, setting down roots and integrating into the community through the art scene. For example, on my art ambassador tours that I lead every year, we visited the vital and dynamic art scenes in LA, which is huge, New Orleans, or NOLA, which has Project 4 coming up, and a brand new warehouse district since Katrina, Chicago, which is always strong, Miami, constantly growing because of the art fairs every year in December, and Denver, the boom town that we heard about last week in our conversation with Doug Cassina. Next year, we're going to be going to Seattle to see what's happening there. With my travels to these different regions, I've found that each region in the country, in fact in the world, embraces its own history and has its own identity and way of putting out energy around their art community. But the rules are pretty much the same everywhere. It's the dynamic that changes from place to place. You can be a successful artist these days no matter where you live. It depends on what you want and where you find your community. I talk about how this can happen for you in my book, 9 Steps to Artistic Freedom, Living the Artist's Life and Making It Sustainable, which, if you're interested in reading, you can get at bit.ly/order9steps. The title is available on Amazon, 9 Steps to Artistic Freedom. I'll also talk about this at the end of the show today when I tell you about the professional course for artists I lead called the YES Program. But right now, I'm pleased to introduce our guest, Michael Lyons-Wier. Michael Lyons-Wier is going to give us his perspective of the New York art scene as a gallery owner in the heart of Chelsea in New York City. Michael was the gallery director in my gallery 25 years ago in Chicago, the Gwenda J Gallery. And we've known each other and seen each other off and on as our paths have traversed different parts of the art world. Lyons-Wier Gallery champions contemporary artists whose conceptual content is buttressed by their deftness of hand. That's how Michael describes it, and he's going to tell us what it means and what it looks like when we come back after the break. This is the Art Ambassador radio show. I'm Gwenda Joyce, and we're coming to you from Bold Brave Media and TuneIn Radio. Stay with us. We'll be right back to talk more about the contemporary art world. Welcome back to the Art Ambassador radio show. I'm your host, Gwenda Joyce. We're coming to you live from Bold Brave Media and TuneIn Radio. Today, I'm really pleased to have as my guest Michael Lyons-Wier, the owner of Lyons-Wier Gallery in Chelsea in New York City. Michael opened his first gallery nearly 25 years ago in Chicago, where we knew each other. And he started his gallery after he had worked in several other galleries, including my own. We were located in the River North Gallery District of Chicago, which was one of the first warehouse districts in the United States that turned into a gallery neighborhood. The influx of galleries contributed to the gentrification of that marginal, fairly risky part of the city. After the galleries moved in, it quickly transformed into a place to frequent to find the best of Chicago's creative community. It's still that way today, although you'd barely recognize the roots of the history. Michael opened his own gallery in Chicago, giving early shows to young, up-and-coming figurative artists such as Susanna Coffey and Anne Gale, who've both gone on to widespread acclaim. He moved his gallery to New York and opened there, first in the East Village, and in 2002 he moved to West Chelsea in a space upstairs in a large gallery building, showing what he called conceptual realism. In 2010, he moved to the current space on ground level on the same block as major New York galleries such as Gagosian and Mary Boone. I'm pleased to have Michael Lyons-Wier as my guest today. It's great to catch up with you, Michael. Welcome to the show. Now, Michael, as you've been hearing, I've been talking about New York as the penultimate goal for artists and anyone involved in the art world. And why don't you've been in New York now for a long time. What do you think is the most amazing thing about the New York art scene?
The most amazing thing for me is really guilt by association, if you will. The pieces are always moving in the art world, so the more connections that you can make, I feel the longer you can try to ferret out what it is that you're trying to say in New York, because it is a very noisy city. But, again, I always think of New York as a friendly town, if you will, because there's so much going on. People will form their own associations, and when there's an opportunity, they are inclined to take you with them.
Well, that's great. Yeah, it does. So that's great. You found the people to be friendly and accepting, I would imagine. Who are some of the people in the art world who have influenced you or been connections that you really appreciate?
Within the art world, that's kind of a conundrum because we all really march to our own voice, if you will. And to that extent, the peers within the gallery district, I mean, there are my contemporaries that we have risen through the ranks, starting in 2001 when the art fairs were launched in Miami. And when you're locked in a hotel for a week, you made friends, and people along the way that we were all starting out, we've all kind of, those of us that have been able to maintain, find our own footing and our own voice. So within influences, I would say not so much within my peer group as a business, but more so working with the artists and collectors that I have here in New York. It's the drive of the artists and seeing the work that they continually develop and put themselves on the line that really gets you up in the morning in order to get into the trench again and really try to find a way to get their voice heard again in the cacophony of New York. So my influences really stem from more outside of the art world with regards to my personal relationships and how people support your efforts, albeit not understanding what it is that you do, and then finding that renewed energy through the artists that we work with.
So your gallery is located in the heart of Chelsea on West 24th Street, and you're right there with several other big-name galleries. And, this I'm sure is a choice you've made as opposed to being in other Manhattan neighborhoods, such as the Lower East Side, that has a lot of galleries that are very independent and maybe smaller in scope. So what's it like to be among that kind of company? And not only company, which of course will cause an influx of people to come to your neighborhood, but also the competition that having other galleries nearby brings to you.
With regards to competition, or earlier you were mentioning, hundreds, if not thousands, of galleries in New York.
Uh-huh.
For me, it's just proof of concept. If there's a lot of us here, then there must be a reason for it to exist. So with regards to my surroundings, I've always tried, and this stemmed from back when we were working together in the early '90s. And that is to be in the area where people that are interested in looking at art are going to be. So I started out in the River North when I could have gone to Wicker Park. When I came to New York, I started out in the East Village because it was a space that I found that was available, but I was ever focused and anxious to get over to the West Side, to Chelsea, under the auspices that people that are coming, West Chelsea was kind of like River North. In the early aughts, there was really not that much going on over here outside of the art business. So if you were on 24th Street or 25th Street, whatever, you were here to see art, whether you were an artist or a patron or an enthusiast. I just wanted to be where it was easy access, because the business is hard enough to get somebody to come by. It's, again, the guilt by association. Find the people that you want to be like and move next to them.
And I love how you describe having a gallery as needing to have proof of concept. So explain to me what your gallery is in terms of its aesthetic focus, its direction, and even its mission. What makes it stand out, and what is that concept that you're building your whole business and the outlook and relationships around?
Yeah, that kind of stems down to the conceptual realism that I've been hammering away at for such a long time. And for me, the main principle is deftness of hand. The contemporary art world is full of many, many different vocabularies. And the vocabulary that I collect are things that are made well. So if I'm going to sell something, I'm certainly going to buy it. So I'm not going to sell, material that I don't think has the deftness of hand that I would patron. So I think craft and understanding one's limitations and excelling with the gifts that you have in order to, craft the best message. I'm very much interested in representational work, although there are some artists that we've begun to work with that are more in the abstract world. But when you and I were working together, you had introduced me to people like Eric Schultes and various other artists who had a real deftness of hand, but also had a strong conceptual aspect to the work. So I want, unlike photorealism, which we're often linked to, I want the interest of the painting to be outside of the picture plane rather than held into the picture plane like a Richard Estes, if you will. So really, everything that we're doing is based around craft, understanding, and a broader message beyond the picture plane.
I like the way that you describe it, and it seems very clear to you, which must really help not only you in terms of selecting the gallery artists that you want to represent and present, but you also, I'm sure, are making a clear distinction to the people who come into the gallery, the collectors you have. So when we return after taking a short break, I'd love to find out more about your audience and your collectors that you cultivate. Right now, we're speaking with Michael Lyons-Wier of the Lyons-Wier Gallery. This is the Art Ambassador Radio Show. I'm your host, Gwenda Joyce. We're coming to you live on BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. Stay with us. We have lots more about the art world to talk about. Welcome back to the Art Ambassador radio show on Bold Brave Media and TuneIn Radio. I'm your host, Gwenda Joyce, and I'm here with Michael Lyons-Wier of Lyons-Wier Gallery in New York City. We've been talking about Michael's gallery and his aesthetic direction and how collectors actually feel about the gallery when they come in and see what you have on the walls. Do they understand that you have an aesthetic direction, Michael? Tell us what it's like to be working with collectors.
Yeah,
or the art public.
Sorry. Yeah. So, within the context of where we are, now that we're ground floor on 24th Street, we get a tremendous audience. And it can, again, be artists, patrons, enthusiasts, etc. I think the general term that we always hear is how great it is executed. We, again, focus on the deftness of hand. So with a lot of contemporary work being heavy on the conceptual side, we are heavy on the applied side. And I think it's refreshing to be able to walk into the gallery and actually smell linseed oil or understand that this was created recently and it's new and fresh. So I think, again, the thing that we hear the most is we love how the work is made. Now, they might not like the image and they might not walk out with the painting, but because there's that consistency, again, with the applied side of it, our viewership has a particular expectation of what they're going to find within the gallery. And after having it for 25 years, I can say when I've tried to diverge from what it is that I have established, I get more questions than I would like to answer as to, why are we doing this, or what's the change? What are you looking at? And it's everything is working now on an intuitive level, if you will.
Well, you've had the gallery now a long time, and some artists have stayed with you, and some artists have come and gone. And yet, I'm sure you're always taking on new artists and discovering new talent. Do you still get excited at the prospect of presenting a new artist onto the scene?
Absolutely. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, no. Tell us about that. I mean, how do you find new artists?
Finding new artists is difficult, and it's becoming more and more difficult because we're so inundated with places and things that get in the way. There are many universities here, and you try to get through the studios and find that artist that is undiscovered. But what I have found, and what I've asked of all of my artists as well as collectors, is who are 5 artists that you purchase? Now, if you're an artist, that's a great question to ask of them. So when I am working with somebody, I'll say, hey, Fahamu, who are 5 artists that you would purchase? Not that you like, but that you would purchase. And at this point, it's really more of a referral. Same thing with collectors. I mean, there are collectors that I've worked with for 20 years that when they find somebody that they get excited about, they'll send me an email or pick up the phone and give me a call and make an introduction of people that I should be looking at. Back again when in the mid 90s and early aughts, when we were working with slides, there was a familiarity and something palpable that you could see. But with the inundation of social media, I'm not quite sure what I'm looking at anymore. So when I am walking through an art fair and I find a little painting that I just absolutely have to buy, I'll purchase it and then wonder what it is that I was driven to it, because we've been around long enough that if you find something you like, you buy it immediately. And then you figure out what it is that you like about it. And there are several artists that I have, that I now work with because I had purchased their work for a year or 2 years down the road and thought, well, if I'm buying this or collecting this artist, maybe I should start representing them.
I love what you say about that because there is a difference when you're moved to collect something. And I often encourage artists to think about collecting art as well. And they look at me like, oh, really? I never really thought about doing that. I just make it. But I really appreciate what you're saying in terms of that collecting impulse, that need to buy. There's something special that an artwork says when it says, take me home. I think that's what everyone's aspiring to. We're having a great time here talking with Michael Lyons-Wier from Lyons-Wier Gallery in New York. We're going to take a break. I'm your host, Gwenda Joyce of the Art Ambassador Radio Show on BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. Stay with us. We'll have more Art World talk when we come back. Welcome back to the Art Ambassador Radio Show. I'm your host, Gwenda Joyce. We're live on BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. I have been enjoying talking to Michael Lyons-Wier about his gallery in New York City in the Chelsea district. Michael, one of the things I've noticed about you as an art dealer in your gallery is over the years you have shown a lot of women in your gallery, which I think is great. And I also have been aware that sometimes you'll push out into different media, not strictly painting. And I think that expansiveness kind of broadens a gallery. Tell me about your thought process and what you're thinking when you are making those kinds of selections.
Yeah, it's kind of like going back to the intuitive goosebumps selection process. When I'm viewing work, a lot of times it's without a name or a gender, and I'll happen upon a painting, or you walk into a studio and it's crowded and you don't know who the artist is, and the female participation in the gallery has just been a happenstance. It's nothing that I've sought after in order to build a stable. It just happened to be the bulk of the work that I was responding to, and I think that there's something different. There's an essence that's communicated in a very direct way that I appreciate. And the building blocks that are in place, again, it's goosebumps. And when there were certain times within the context of the gallery where if I had 15 artists, that a good 10 of them were female artists, and people didn't. It wasn't something that gallery goers were coming in to see. Oh, this is that. It's more that, wow, these are incredible painters, and it just happens to be thusly. If that makes any sense. Now, with regards to the medium, when I was in undergraduate school, I was studying feminist and political art. So it was the Jenny Holzer and the Barbara Kruger kind of anti-material and methods, which is the broader conceptual things that's embedded in me. But there is just something other that is communicated when artists are working in fiber or mixed media like glass beads. I've always had fiber artists in the gallery, and that is a particular interest of mine from a collecting standpoint. And when I find someone like Casey Zavalia, who we've represented for quite a number of years now, who does the most amazing portraits of her family that are done in embroidery, one-ply thread, just the sheer effort that it takes to compose one of these images, and then the stark image that is rendered, it's just breathtaking. And when you find something special like that, if you can grab a hold of it and squirrel it away, it is a godsend. I don't know if that answers your question.
It does. And when you speak about Casey Zavalia, absolutely. I remember seeing her work at the art fair in Miami in your booth, seeing it for the first time and just being mesmerized. I was fascinated with the image, and then when I found out about her medium and how she put her image together, it was even more compelling.
That's just
So,
astonishing. And so going back to the idea of getting something that gets you excited, when I am standing with a piece and I get everybody's attention and you can tell that they're locked in on such an exquisite work, and then you get to turn it around and you show people the back of it, and that's when they pass out. I mean, it is just, it takes your breath away. So that's the things that still keep me excited about the art world after 25 years.
Well, it is exciting, and I think that's what art is all about. And I love the fact that you are including the media, the different media in your gallery. I have always felt historically that the art world is too stratified when, there was a gallery for ceramics and there was a gallery for photography and a gallery for painting. We're going to take a break. I'm your host, Gwenda Joyce, of the Art Ambassador radio show on BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. Stay with us. We'll have more Art World talk. Welcome back to the Art Ambassador radio show, coming to you live from BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. I'm your host, Gwenda Joyce, and I'm here with Michael Lyons-Wier. We're talking about his gallery in Chelsea. Michael, I was just commenting that I really appreciate that you have a gallery that doesn't have a media bias. You have more of a conceptual bias, and therefore you're showing a number of different artists who are working in different media. And I think that's really exciting. And I know it also in your gallery, you go to a lot of art fairs and you have an opportunity to take these artists' works to the different art fairs. You were just at the SOFA show in Chicago, and you showed a ceramic sculptor, Michael Baroniak. And tell us about the different art fairs and how important they are for your gallery and your outreach to get your artists out there.
Right. Well, the art scene, the art fair scene, I should say, has changed radically, as you mentioned at the beginning of the show, as the art business has. And in the, again, mid-'90s, when you and I and everybody was moving and jockeying around to get at Art Chicago was one of maybe 2 or 3 well-known fairs globally. You fast forward into the early aughts, and Miami was born. And when Miami was born, we jumped in. We were here in New York and had the opportunity to get in with Scope and subsequently with Pulse, and to be able to, work exclusively down in Miami. But by doing that art fair, you would then invite it to Barcelona or to London or to Basel. And there was a lot of effort that was put into being in the art fair scene. And I was joking with you the other day that that's kind of the difference between ROE and ROI, because when we were doing, 10 art fairs or 8 art fairs a year, that was return on emotions. we felt like, it's going to be the best place to go, and you have to go. And when you're a small gallery, and I don't mean that in a young sense, but when you're a small gallery, every penny counts. And if you have a good Miami show and then 3 bad shows, maybe one in Los Angeles or one in London, it takes a long, long, long time for that to recover. And we were primarily doing the art fairs in order to get in the sightline of the collectors that went to galleries such as Gagosian and Mary Boone and Laura Augustine. So over the the time that I've been in business and being able to get my ground floor space on 24th Street, we find that with the proliferation of art fairs, there's just collector fatigue and art fair fatigue. You can't go to all of them. And what used to be exclusively shown in Chicago and then in Miami, that would be the only place in the States that you can see it. Now, if you don't see it in Miami, you can see it in Hong Kong or you can see it in London. And the urgency is really starting to fall. So we're constantly reevaluating the shows that we want to do. We currently participate in Art Miami, and they've been very brilliant at driving crowds. So when you invest in a weekend, which is extremely expensive, and you see 80,000 people, that's a great advertising budget, if you will. But again, with so many art fairs going on, we're really dialing back on how much we're on the road.
So you have maybe become a little more conservative about how you're going to select the fairs. I know that you're going to be at Art Miami. I'm going to be there myself. I look forward to seeing you in your booth there in December. Um, the other way you've done some outreach, Michael, is that you've started to list your artists with First Dibs and do some online art sales. Um, how does that work for the gallery?
These large online marketplaces such as First Dibs and Artsy and whatnot are crucial. There's often a subscription base involved with it, which can be costly, and you just have to factor that into the cost of doing business. But there are more and more people that, again, with the collector fatigue, it's just much easier to have a nice cup of coffee and peruse the internet. Again, it kind of goes back to the guilt by association. We're looking at the marketplaces that, elevate our brand. So within that branding, Artsy is just a fantastic place to be. First Dibs. What I like about First Dibs is kind of more of that connoisseur, if you will. Someone that'll have the Biedermeier chair and a contemporary mid-century sofa and artwork from various centuries, perhaps. So that is the collection that I'm looking for. Someone that's just not with that kind of myopic, I'm looking for a particular thing. I like to cast a broader net.
And is this working for you? Do the online sales actually work?
Absolutely, yeah, without question, and it's the proof of concept. If there's enough people that are subscribing to it, people must be moving to work because it's not free. You're putting in time and you're putting in inventory, but if it's costing you X amount a month, you got to get something out of it, or it's not worth doing. But those are two sites that we have found to work very well for us.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. And it seems like you've really got a number of directions that you're extending out into in order to reach those clients and to cultivate them and interest them in your gallery and your gallery artists. How many of your clients do you think are new to you, and how many are clients who you've worked with in the past and that you've been able to build up over the years, this kind of interest in collecting your artists based on what you're selecting for your gallery?
Yeah, because we can talk about over the years, there's only a handful of clients that I work with that have been with me since '95. Again, people's interests change, people move, houses get full, buying habits change, etc. We are very blessed to be ground floor 24th Street. And I would say within every exhibition, we glean 2 or 3 new clients that walk in off the street. And with our last exhibition, James Rick, all of the paintings that sold were to all new clients. And these were people that walked in off the street, either the end user, such as the collector, or art consultants that are walking Chelsea, looking for their clients. So we have a tremendous amount of new patrons, if you will, but collectors are. It's an odd term nowadays because we have people that will buy from us and then they just move on to the next gallery or to the next idea, and maybe never sell to them again. So with that revolving door, being having a premier location is tantamount to staying in business. At least it is for us.
Well, Michael, this has been fascinating and really interesting to think about the challenges that your gallery has. And I congratulate you for your staying power, building and staying in this wonderful business for over 25 years. What would you say? I know galleries have to reinvent themselves constantly. And as we're wrapping up our conversation today, what would you say is maybe the best thing about owning a gallery and working in the art world? What sustains you?
The autonomy. Yeah, I mean, this is, I am someone that is involved in aesthetics, not only, within the painting world, but in lifestyle. And New York, for me, is just the hub and the pulse, the heart of where the newness or the nextness is evolving. So for me, the thing that keeps me going and keeps the lights on is New York herself.
Well, you're doing a wonderful job, and I so appreciate the opportunity for you to come here and be on the Art Ambassador radio show with us today, Michael. We've been talking with Michael Lyons-Wier of Lyons-Wier Gallery. This is the Art Ambassador coming to you from Bold Brave Media and TuneIn Radio. I'm your host, Gwenda Joyce. Stay with us. We'll be right back after. Welcome back to the Art Ambassador radio show, coming to you from Bold Brave Media and TuneIn Radio. I'm your host, Gwenda Joyce. I want to thank Michael Lyons-Wier for being on the show today and giving us a great view of what it means to run a gallery in New York City. The one thing that I have found about gallery owners is that they are independent-minded and they love that autonomy. And Michael explained very well about his direction and specific things that he wants to accomplish in his gallery. I think he does a great job. I hope that you'll have a chance to visit next time you're in New York, or if you're in New York, go on down to Chelsea. Galleries are great places for an art lover to see the best free entertainment that there is. If you're an artist, you've probably aspired to have a gallery represent your art. Working with a gallery can be great for not only sales, but up-leveling your art career. Galleries have a bigger reach out to the public and to the art professionals who frequent the galleries. And New York, of course, has the greatest access, but there are thousands of galleries around the country, and each one has a different bent. If you feel like New York is out of reach to you, there are still best practices that will get you to find the right gallery for you. If you're looking for a gallery, it's really important to do your research first, so that when you submit your work, you're at least submitting it to a place that is potentially right for you. If you don't, it creates a sense of bad will. I promised earlier to tell you about my online course, the YES program. It's a course that prepares artists for gallery representation. Almost all of the artists, maybe 80% who attend the YES program, end up with gallery representation. We spend a lot of time going through the steps so that you're clear on what to do. And that's not all. You'll learn what not to do. It's just really helpful to save yourself from mistakes and from the rejection that can come. I offer the YES program throughout the year. The next program starts this week. It starts on Friday. So if you're interested, you still have time to apply at the artambassador.net website. I have a few spots left. If you mention this program, I will give you a $100 discount. And that's at artambassador.net website. There are a few words I'd like to say about looking for a gallery. If you're looking for someone to represent you, it's a good idea to visit as many galleries as you can so that you can select the right kind for you. There are a number of things you want to think about. First, you want one that has an aesthetic match. Then you want a gallery to show work that's in the same medium and the same idea that your work is in. I talked to an artist once who submitted work to a gallery of figurative art with his figure. He was submitting to a gallery of figurative art, and he was an abstract artist. And I asked him why he did that, and he said, well, I think they should show abstract art. Well, that's not going to happen. It's more the other way around. You want to fit into what the gallery's aesthetic is. And if it's a good match, go for it. You also want to consider price, the price category. And also recognize that a gallery is a reciprocal relationship. You want to be involved with one that you have a mutual trust and you like each other. So these things are really important for artists who are aspiring to find galleries. And if you have questions, we're going to be meeting with one more gallery owner next week. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have. If you email me at gwenda@artambassador.net, I can answer them on the show next time. And take a look at the YES program. You'll find it on the website at artambassador.net. Go ahead and apply. We can have a conversation. I look forward to talking to you. It's been great having you here today on the Art Ambassador radio show. I'm your host, Gwenda Joyce, coming to you live from Bold Brave Media and TuneIn Radio.